Well, I didn't expect my predictions video to spark that much of a debate. Let's dive into what plant success might look like in 2026. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to sum it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, I was exceptionally surprised how kind of involved the community got with the predictions video. I wasn't expecting too much on that one, but it seems to be a topic that a lot of us want to discuss, and it was quite nice to see the community feel that was happening within the comments of that video. And it wasn't the fact that a lot of people were necessarily agreeing with me, but it was how personal the conversation was becoming for a lot of people, and I mean that in a good way. So let me set up some intentions for this video. It's not going to be a how-to. It's not necessarily going to be about any forms of rules. It's more about reframing what doing well with plants actually means. Myself and a lot of my actual viewers have been in this kind of world for a very long time now, quite a few years to be exact. And we've seen trends, we've seen the cycles happen, and I don't think it's necessarily going to be a big change that's happening now, but it's that cyclical nature going back to what used to be stable and exist before the hype blew up. But let's talk a bit more about why plant success got distorted in the first place. And by that, we need to also look at what plant success was like before the kind of massive boom that happened and the trends and the rare plants and all of these things. So before all of that, it was about having steady growth on your plants, plants more importantly surviving, and also fitting in with all of our spaces. But then, as always, social media came into this, and it was less about stability and more about visibility. Remember, like all of these kind of like massive long updates you would get on things like Instagram or Pinterest or anything like that, where you would have people just showing off all of their exotic and different looking plants. And that encouraged a bit more of that kind of strive towards novelty instead of stability. It also kind of grounded the notion of large collections as a proxy for skill. So just by the fact that somebody had a lot of plants, it must mean obviously that they're really, really skilled. But it just could mean that people are spending a lot of money, the plants might not be surviving or thriving particularly well, but because people had massive, massive collections, it was considered a notion of skill. I think people have kind of managed to peer through that veil a bit more now and see that that's not always the case. And just as a gentle reminder before anybody kind of jumps into the comments, this isn't something that a lot of us or anybody within the community necessarily chose on purpose. It's something that happened discreetly and collectively. It's something to be said that if we're constantly exposed to the same thing over and over again, that becomes the norm. And I think the important thing here is that we need to start reframing the kind of the notion of failing with plants when we're kind of using the wrong scorecard. And I think that's what people are realizing these days, is that that scorecard of like massive collections and just getting things for the novelty of it all isn't always going to be super, super sustainable. But what are people kind of seeing and doing now? And I can talk a bit from experience from this, only because I kind of see a microcosm that maybe a lot of people don't see all the time, even people within the community. It's not just myself, it's a lot of the content creators, because we get to see all of your lovely comments and we kind of see a really quick snapshot of what's happening. And that predictions video is one that kind of really highlighted what might be happening around globally, not just in the UK or anywhere else, because a lot of people are changing the way that they're necessarily thinking about certain things. So first thing that I noticed as a whole is that a lot of people just don't have the time or the patience anymore to deal with diva plants. And I'm not, before anybody jumps into the comments, I'm not just talking about calatheas. I'm talking about some of the plants that we kind of cutesy and kind of call divas, but it might just be plants that I've kind of mentioned on other videos that just might not be suited to be grown in a home environment. Not every tropical plant is going to be the easiest thing in the world to be growing in a household environment. Everybody's household environment is different as well. So there's just a lot more people that are just not willing to put up with diva-ish behavior from their plants. The other massive one, and I think this one was the one that was overarching, was the fact that a lot of people are downsizing without shame. And let me say that again, downsizing without shame. And there should not and never should have been any shame about downsizing your collection. It needs to be manageable for yourself. It needs to be something that you are comfortable with instead of becoming overwhelming for a lot of us. And I say this with my entire chest because I know a large chunk of the community, or maybe it's just the vocal people that will reach out to me on an occasion. A lot of people struggle with kind of mental health, and that's part of the reason why they ended up within kind of the houseplant hobby. And I mean that it could be a spectrum of things. For a lot of people, it might bring them peace. For a lot of people that are anxious, it might bring them some calm. There's all of these different things that people were utilizing the plants to help them within their mental health journey. And I don't think there's enough talk about this as well, because we obviously all will focus on the plants and how to grow plants and look at how pretty the plants are. But there is that other more emotional side of what it means and why a lot of people got into it to begin with. And another big one was a lot more people these days are choosing plants, not always necessarily for their looks, for the novelty, for the rarity, but they're looking plants that will fit in their space, fit their light conditions, fit their care that they can provide the plant. And that is healthy. That is something that means that you are likely to have good, stable, exponential growth with the plants that you are kind of taking that moment of thought to go, this probably fits me, it fits the plant. This is a good match, actually. An extreme example of this would be people that maybe live in some of the darkest places of the world, maybe really northern areas, kind of going for something that needs bright light all of the time. That's going to be a struggle. It's going to be great in the kind of summer months, but maybe in the winter months, it might be something that they don't really want to be going through the hassle of grow lights and kind of all of these things. And I think people are just becoming a lot more tuned in and aware and unwilling to put themselves in difficult situations when they don't have to. And life context really plays a part here. It's things like finances, it's things like time, it's things like other kind of responsibilities, families, jobs, all of these things. And these things are not excuses. These are things that need to be taken into consideration if we want this hobby to be a sustainable one, not just for the wider community, but for ourselves individually. And this is the big thing that I want to say in this part of the video, is that success isn't universal, it's contextual. So it's very much going to be relevant to each individual person. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. I've got a big collection. I've still got a relatively big collection. I have also been downsizing, believe me or not. You might not be able to see it, but trust me, there's a lot of plants that have been going out. There's a lot of plants that I might have tried to save in previous years that I'm just like, I don't have the mental bandwidth at the moment. Luckily for me, in touch wood, my business is doing really well. My own personal business is doing relatively well at the moment, which means I have even less time to be dealing with this. I'm also, as mentioned in other videos, hopefully looking to sell this house and move into a new house by the end of this year. There's going to be a lot on top of me trying to maintain everything and probably maintaining things that don't bring me joy. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm using myself as an example because I can, it's easy. And the important thing is that success might be different for two very different individuals within very different kind of conditions. So for example, I know that my success might be to just kind of start minimizing some of the plants that I have now. Nothing going to be huge, at least for me. And this is for me, this is everybody, the people that are choosing to downsize. I'm trying to see how I'm going to word this properly. The people that are downsizing to the level that is appropriate to them. I do not think, and I do not encourage kind of downsizing shame, if that makes sense. Not the fact that people are downsizing. It's just that, oh, did you only downsize this much? Or you downsized too much. No, it is individual and it is nobody's kind of place to be putting that on somebody else. If that is what that individual feels comfortable with, that is what is right for that individual. It might not be for you, but it's not you that's downsizing. Yeah? And that's why success could look very different for two different individuals. So for me, it might be a smaller downsize. For somebody else, they're just like, I really cannot be dealing with 200, 300 plants. I need to bring it back down to like 10 or 20. That is fine. That is success for that individual. It's not what I want to do with my collection, but we are both valid in the way that we're doing things, and we will both be successful if we stick true to what we want to do. But let's talk about what this new definition of success with houseplants might look like. And I've kind of split this into kind of 4 major pillars based on kind of my predictions video and also what a lot of the comments have been saying, not just in that video, by the way. This is kind of information that I've kind of held in my brain for the last like year or two as to what the kind of trend is for most people at the moment. So first pillar is longevity over novelty. So this might look like a successful plant might be a plant that you've had for 10 years. It might be a huge, very, very common houseplant versus a very rare and expensive seedling. You can see the differences here. Like the emphasis for a lot of people these days is that longevity, is how successful can I be with this one plant, and how big can I get it? How many years can I keep it growing happily without it causing too many issues? We're coming back to the drama queen aspect here. So there is that longevity is becoming much more important to people than just the novelty of having the new it plant. The second pillar is something that I like to call alignment over aspiration. So this might be something like the fact that you no longer have to fight the plants in order to make them comfortable in your space. What that might mean is you don't want to be dealing with having to provide everything with extra humidity, grow lights, finding kind of right positions and doing all these minor tweaks. So for instance, for the people that may be growing plants from higher altitude, they might not be trying that if their space won't ever get cold enough. They're just like, they are tired, and I understand this, of trying to adapt their entire space and their entire kind of life really, dealing with these plants in order to keep them happy within this space. And essentially what this means is choosing a plant that does well in your conditions, with your care. We've all been saying this, and I've been saying this until I'm blue in the face, but I think more people are doing that more proactively these days. And the slight relief that comes with that in terms of not having that pressure of trying to get everything just right for things that just really will struggle to work in your space, even if you do all the extra bits. So I'll give you a very extreme example here. If you've got a plant and you're maybe just starting off, or you've never had something like a humidifier in your space, and you get one plant that's a prima donna plant, and you're just like, I kind of like it, but it's a rare plant, and I was kind of influenced by everybody else to get this plant. I didn't necessarily need it, but it's the new it plant, and I want to get it. And then all of a sudden you need to buy a really expensive humidifier. Not everybody will, by the way. Oh, and then you might want to grow lights, and it's just like, so that plant had X cost with it, it's caused X amount of stress, and you've now got extra peripheral costs, including running costs for all of these things, to basically make sure that that thing that you've just purchased, that plant that you've just purchased, is okay within your space. As I said, this might look different from different people. Some people might be, you know what, I want to get rid of 300, 400 plants. I want to take it down to 10, but I want to give them their ideal conditions, and I know that I can do that for 10 plants. Great. That also works. This is not me shaming anybody that's at different stages of all this, but it's kind of what I'm seeing as a whole within the community from what people are saying. And obviously there's going to be outliers with this, as there's going to be with anything, but this is the overarching trend, at least that I'm seeing, based on what a lot of you are saying, actually. The third pillar for me is capacity over ambition. So really being aware of how much time things can take from your day-to-day life and how much of that you are willing to put up with, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm talking capacity versus ability. So for instance, capacity versus ambition, sorry. So what that might look like is, before it'd be like, I need all of these plants, and look at me being ambitious by getting all of these different plants with all these different requirements and having them in all these different places. And guess what happened to a lot of people when they were doing that, including myself, by the way? There's burnout that's going to happen because you are basically spinning a whole bunch of plates, a whole different colors of plates as well. Like, think about categories. I've got this category of plants and these subcategories of all these things that need all of these things, and I need to be doing this over here, and I need to also be doing this over here. And it's just like, where's the capacity gone at that point? Out the window, because it's just like, oh, this started as a hobby. It was one or two things that I could just pay some attention to, and all of a sudden I'm just like, this is taking over my life. So there is something to be said about that. And the benefit of something like this is you can invest a bit more in those plants so you're getting the honors your capacity rather than the ambition side of things. Because if you've got less plants and you're focusing on a few select plants that you're dealing with, you've then got the capacity to go that extra mile if you wanted to. Again, this is all kind of dependent on situations. So if you wanted to spend more time on dealing with those 10 plants so they can get what you would consider to be successful, large, many years, whatever that might be, it's a lot easier to do it when it fits within your life's capacity. And the fourth pillar is enjoyment over image. So by this, I mean, there's a lot of people that you needed to get this plant because it looked so cool and all of these things. I'm gonna talk about some of the heavy hitters over the last few years. So think about the pink princesses and how much stress that brought everybody. Variegation, there's not enough variegation. It's got too much variegation. It's the leaf is snapped on my one variegated leaf, all these things, or the melanochrysum, the melanochrysis for a lot of people, or the queen anthurium. There's a lot of these things. Obviously, these are really easy, really easy plants for me to bully, and I'm not, because for a lot of people that could work. But there's also a large number of people that this caused issues with because everybody was focused on that image versus the actual enjoyment. And I can use myself as an example here. Some of the plants, and almost invariably throughout the years as I've been downsizing or kind of trading plants or giving plants away or literally just putting plants in the compost bin, 9 times out of 10, they are plants that everybody else was getting hyped about and just going, oh, this is really cool. And I'm just like, oh, well, I've come across it and I'm going to get it. Maybe it's not that expensive and it's fine. I'm quite glad for myself that I didn't spend that much money on trendier plants and I waited. But almost invariably, those are the plants that end up no longer in my collection because I'm just like, there wasn't the interest there to begin with. People that maybe have watched some of my unboxings over the years, a lot of the time the plants that I kind of got to the point where I know myself, and I think a lot of people are as well now, where it's just like, oh, couldn't care less what everybody else likes. If I like what everybody else likes, that's different. But I'm not going to go out of my way to buy what everybody else likes. I'm going to buy the weirdos, the kooky things. I'm going to care for some of these things. Obviously, this is depending on what I want to do with the plants at that particular moment in time. And those are the plants that have bring me enjoyment. So there's certain things like the Anthurium ericemoides, and I'll show you that actually. It's the little one that is trying to come back for a while now, and it's struggling the most. This is my biggest one that I had. It went downhill fast when I changed the media, and people that have been around, they know that. But this is a plant that when I was purchasing it, not a lot of people were aware of it or had even purchased it. And everybody was like, oh, and I'm just like, but I loved it. And I loved it enough that when it died, I have gone out of my way to replace that plant because I did manage to get it at quite a large size and I would love to do that again. That might not be for everybody. Somebody might love a plant and it burnt them so badly in the end that they're just like, this is not for me. That's also okay. That's also okay. Ultimately, what I think this fourth pillar really means is plants should add to your life, not compete with it. So they should bring you enjoyment instead of more work and more stress to do things, just so you can keep up that image that I've got that really cool plant that everybody else has. And I truthfully, again, based on even personal conversations that I've had with people, I don't think I'm the only one where usually the plants that get out first are the ones that everybody else liked, but you were a bit blah about them, and you're just like, well, there must be a hype about this for a reason. Maybe I should bring that plant in and try it. And invariably, it's just like, no, the love wasn't there to begin with. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it can happen. Sometimes you can fall in love with a plant that you're a bit mad about. I've done that a few times. Usually it's not trendy plants, it's just plants that I might see somewhere, and I'm just like, I've never seen anybody mention this. This is a bit of a, it's an interesting plant-ish, but and I bring it back and I'm just like, and almost always, that's the interesting thing. Maybe it's just something that's just happened to me. Almost always, those are the plants that are actually just super easy to take care of as well. The ones that nobody's talking about, and the ones that you randomly find somewhere. And I'm just like, oh, this was a good purchase. I like it. I like it. So what might this all mean practically? One of the things I think this is probably going to mean, and this is more me kind of thinking out loud here, is there's going to be more pauses before purchases. That impulse, I need to buy it now, I found it, it needs to get purchased, is almost entirely gone at this point. And I can remember back to the early days on this kind of like houseplant boom, because there's been a few ones that have happened over the decades as well. But remember when everybody wanted a philodendron gloriosum, and at least here in the UK there was a point where it would go on the market by several sellers and sell out within minutes. And if you weren't there when they were going to drop that plant, you missed out. You then need to wait for months until that plant comes back on the market, and everybody's just like, yes, buy, 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 buy. That wasn't healthy, and for a lot of people, myself included, by the way, I got into that hype at that point, and I've spoken ad nauseum about my thoughts on the gloriosum, and it's not me bashing. I never bash any plants. My opinions on certain plants are my own, and it's what worked for me and didn't work for me. And the gloriosum for me was just a bit of a space hog. It was a beautiful plant. It's still a great plant, super easy, at least in my experience, not for everybody's, and it was a plant that I'm just like, I went through all of that, and ultimately I did not blink twice when I got rid of that plant, because I'm just like, it wasn't something that I necessarily needed, and I should have paused instead of getting wrapped up with all this. And I know I'm not the only one with a lot of plants. Gloriosum was just an example. The other one, and this is I think a bit more nuanced as well, and maybe this is something that does come a bit more with time as well for the people that have maybe been in the hobby for long enough, is a lot more time spent on observation rather than fixing. Because I think if we've been doing this for long enough, we also now know that sometimes overreacting and fixing and trying to fix super quickly almost can cause more problems than just waiting and just monitoring something for a bit before you intervene. And I think a lot more people are coming around to that these days, of just like, okay, there might be something wrong. And this is a perfect example now, this season, the winter season, where people get really paranoid, and there's actually nothing wrong with the plants. It might be some of the older leaves are yellowing off. That's normal. And maybe you've tiny bit overwatered, maybe no root rot, but things like that, that you could kind of just wait for a tiny bit, and it might either resolve itself or the issue might become clearer, rather than you trying to fix it almost immediately, and that panic that comes with that. And I think with that comes a lot more of that patience rather than just fixes. And actually, for a lot of people that are doing this to be a bit more mindful in terms of their mental health and all these things, that pause for this and a bit of patience is actually a good thing. Because it's teaching us all to like kind of self-regulate to a certain point as to not overreact. Because again, remember, there's a lot of people that came into this with either anxiety issues or all of these things, and you don't want things that are going to constantly keep you on that edge. Taking that moment to learn in a very, very gentle way with something like this, of just like breathe, let it breathe, but let me see what happens. Like a few days, a few weeks even sometimes. And then I think a lot of people are realizing that that actually works a lot of the time. It actually works really well. Obviously, if something's like massively wrong and you can see it very quickly, take action. I'm not telling you not to, but it's more about taking that moment to just kind of go, okay, let's see how this plays out. Let's see how this plays out. But what might this mean in terms of how it might look around our lives, our day-to-day lives? So there's more focus from a lot of you on kind of plant styling. And I'm going to heavily caveat this by saying that there was a concept of, when people used to say plant styling before, it was a lot of this, I think this little dark corner of my house, beautifully curated like architectural house, needs a butt of green, so I'm going to put a plant there and it's going to die. This is not what I'm saying with plant styling. I'm talking about actually being a bit more intentional about where you put plants. Plants become part of your life rather than the centerpiece. And I know this is very rich coming from me, where I've got like a conservatory essentially that's like a mini jungle, but that's what I enjoy at this point, and that's fine. But it's not for everybody. I'll hearken people back to, and again, this is no shade to the people that are still enjoying this, or this is something that they love doing, but the IKEA cabinets, the grow tents that by and large are great for growing plants, are not the prettiest thing in the world. Or even like, and I've been quite good at trying to keep my livable space livable, if that makes sense. But I know that's not a luxury that everybody has. I've got the space to be able to shove my crazy into one room. And it spills out a bit in other spaces. I mean, you've all seen my house plant tour within my house plants, but what you will generally see with mine is it's not overflowing. My whole house is in a jungle, because then that starts taking over your life. That becomes the centerpiece of your life. And again, as I said throughout this video, this is not a shame if that's what you enjoy. But for a lot of people that were trying to do that because that's what they kept seeing, it got a bit much. And it's okay to step back from that. And ultimately, I think that the big important thing here, it doesn't necessarily mean boring plants for most people as we go into it now. It just means plants that actually thrive with you. So there's less of this notion of I am buying plants for the gaze, for the eyes of somebody else. I am buying plants because I enjoy it. It's bringing me joy. It could be because of its appearance, but I've mentioned this on loads of my other videos. A lot of my feral plants might not look at their peak, basically. And you can see sometimes I've got plants with crispy edges. Sometimes there might be some bleaching. There might be other issues with the plants. And that's just me, but this is less of an issue for me. Granted, I was never the person that was trying to get plants to look pristine, because at least in my humblest of opinion, they never look pristine in nature. I'm doing enough stuff in the garden and the allotment to know that most plants out and about in the wild do not look picture perfect all the time, and neither should they. We all don't. By and large, we all don't. So why would you expect the same thing for plants, and why would you put that upon yourself? So it's not boring plants, it is just plants that work individually for each one of us when we are choosing what to have in our space, I think. But a little kind of gentle reality check as well. So some things that I think we also need to keep at the front of our mind. So life changes. Something that might be successful for you right now might not be. And I'll use examples that have come up on comments from a lot of my viewers a lot of the times, where before they would have been really stressed and they'd be like, okay, I could have done this all really, really well, but maybe they're pregnant and they know that they're going to have a baby coming soon, and they're just like, I can't deal with 300 odd plants and a newborn, and my first newborn as well at that. This is something that needs to change. Life changes, and we need to be kinder to ourselves in terms of changing what that success might look like in a new life stage as well. Conditions will change as well. I cannot tell you, like, I've moved my plant collection from 3 different houses. Each one of those conditions was going to be different. So certain things that did amazingly, and I look back on pictures from when I first started my collection, probably 6 or 7 years ago now, and I'm just like, oh, I love that plant. But the reality was for that is that was a successful plant within that space, and it would have never have worked in my next house or even this house. And there's going to be a lot of things from this collection when I move to the next house that probably aren't going to make it, because that new house is going to have different conditions. But we all need to kind of be okay with that. We need to accept that the conditions will change. So what success might look like will change as well. And this is one of the big ones. There's 2 big ones in these kind of reality checks that I want to talk about. One is that learning when to stop is also a skill. It really is. And I know this is rich coming from me, because you've seen a lot of times I don't necessarily have an awful lot of self-restraint. That's always been me, if that makes sense. That's always been me. That's an issue that I need to be dealing with in terms of, on kind of how I bring myself a bit of joy, and maybe I should be doing things that are much longer terms rather than a quick fix. That's on my own path to kind of nirvana, if that makes sense. And trust me, I've been doing work with that over the years. This is better, trust me. You should have seen me years ago. But it is one of those things that kind of notion of, oh, I maybe need to stop is also quite important. And the final big reality check here is your failure, when it happens on occasion, does not invalidate your success. I'll say that one more time. Your failure does not invalidate your success. And I know some people have been like, oh, there's a lot of mollycoddling. I'm just like, no, hold on. Let me break this down to you. So if I've been successful with, say, X plant for, say, I'll use the Ismail Dents, because a lot of times people see this behind me in the videos, for over 6 years at this point, and I've got it grown big and all of these things. Would I be sad if that failed? Yes. Like overnight, something happened and I lost that plant. That failure does not invalidate the success that I have had over the years with this plant. And I know that's a specific example. For you, it might be the fact that, you know what, You've kept a plant that nobody else can keep alive, and it was thriving for you for 6 months, a year, something that's not a huge amount of time, and then ultimately it fails. Your success is still there. You kept it alive more than anybody else did. Do not let yourself, because a lot of the times that's something we put on ourselves, do not let yourself take that away from yourself, if that makes sense. Failure will happen, it's fine. I think the new form of success is recognizing when a failure happens and kind of adjusting for it in the future. Either trying that plant again, learning from it, but also recognizing that you had great success with that. Wrapping this video up slowly, because I think this has gone on for a while basically now, and hopefully I've still got some of you still with me here. What does success look like for you now? And this is not me putting pressure on you, but it's more an invitation for you to reflect. What do you think success is for you right now? And maybe tell us what success might have looked like 2, 3, 4 years ago, or 2, 3, 4 months ago for the people that have not been doing this for very long. Things have changed, and I think it was so heartening to see that conversation that was happening on that predictions video and seeing all the community get involved. And I cannot tell you how much I thoroughly enjoy it when you're all having internal conversations within a comment, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe that. When somebody makes a comment and then there's a whole bunch of other people that there's sparks of discussion. I love that. It's something that really, really pleases me, that I'm just like, oh, the community is engaging within itself rather than just me, if that makes sense. That is something that I've wanted for such a long time from this channel, is that sense of community and the fact that you're all super nice to each other as well, and you're all willing to help and engage and give insights and all of these things, and it is lovely. You are all such lovely, lovely human beings, and I cannot consider myself any more luckier than I am by finding such a lovely audience. But enough gushing, basically. You're all lovely, that's what I want to say. But it is one of those things that it's good to reflect on these things and see how things have changed. And even if that pause just makes you think for a second and acknowledge what has changed, I think that is quite important. And yeah, keep discussing with yourselves. A lot of the times, if you're having those nested comments underneath the one comment, I'll try to not get involved. I think I saw something recently, some content creators on, I thought either Instagram or TikTok, where they were talking about reader spaces for books, basically, and that authors maybe shouldn't be getting involved within those spaces when people leave reviews or they have conversations about a book. That's the space for them. It's not for the author to kind of butt in. And I kind of take a bit of that, and I agree with that, for things like those kind of nested YouTube comments. I don't need to butt into your kind of conversation that you're having over there. I might give my 2 cents to the original comment, but I'm gonna let you have that conversation. That is a you space. It's not a space that I should necessarily be involved in, if that makes sense. But just in case you're just kind of sitting there going, why isn't Memo getting involved in this conversation? That is a conversation for you to have as the community. I don't think it's my place to be a part of that. I will do on the comments, on the individual comments, but I'll let you have those conversations. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.